Hello, everyone. Welcome to Resounding Visions. Welcome also to AMD 368 Art of World Cultures. My name is Misael Diaz. I'm an assistant professor of art, media, and design at Cal San Marcos. I'm the instructor of AMD 368, one of the courses that will be hosting the Resounding Visions speaker series this semester. So it's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's program. On behalf of the Resounding Visions curatorial team, which also includes AMD professor Christine Diekman and AMD faculty instructors Ana Luisa Petrisco and Jeffrey Ray, we wanted to begin today's presentation with a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we are speaking to you tonight from the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay peoples, and that the meeting place of CSUSM and its surrounding areas is still home to 6 federally recognized bands of the La Jolla, Pala, Pama, Pechanga, Rincon, Sobobaluseño, Payam people. We'd like to take this moment to acknowledge and express our appreciation and respect for those groups whose homelands we reside and learn on, recognizing that they are stewards of this land from time immemorial, in spite of the ongoing violence of settler colonialism. Given that we're not all together for this session tonight, we invite you to look into whose ancestral homelands you reside on by consulting the resources that I will be sharing in just a sec in the chat as a first step in recognizing the resilience and strength of Indigenous communities and expressing solidarity with efforts to undo their intentional erasure. So there is one resource in the chat, and here is another. So if you are unsure where you reside on in relation to Indigenous lands, those are 2 amazing resources to begin this process of educating yourself on these important histories and continued stories and experiences of Indigenous resilience. Welcome everybody again to our first session of the Spring 2022 Resounding Visions season. This is a year-long series hosting Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists, musicians, and scholars who work at the intersection of sound and art to explore forms of cultural resistance and affirmation. We wanted to begin by also extending a very special thank you to Steve and Laura Wagner and the Epstein Family Foundation for the generous funding that makes these events possible. We also wanted to thank the School of Art staff, especially Albert Rascon, for their continued support to ensure that everything goes smoothly during these sessions. Before introducing today's guest speakers, which I know we're all excited for, and passing on the mic to them, I wanted to let you all know that in lieu of using the chat to share questions and comments with our presenters, we ask that you please use the Q&A function. We're going to be closing down the chat very shortly. So again, if you have a question or comment to share, please type it into the Q&A and we will be happy to address it after the presentation. Today's presentation by Maurice Evans and Grace Kisa will last approximately 45 minutes. And afterwards, we'll be opening it up to questions and comments, which again, I will be reading out loud from the Q&A for our presenters to respond to. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers for tonight, Maurice Evans and Grace Kisa. Maurice Evans is a multidisciplinary artist whose creative focus was first realized through the lens of music. Born in Smyrna, Tennessee, he was introduced to music by his father, a gifted drummer and singer in a gospel choir. Guitar lessons at the age of 4, along with his exposure to the music of Al Green, Chaka Khan, and Marvin Gaye, inspired Evans' creative growth. After studying fashion illustration and working at design firms, Evans pursued an independent artistic career that has included presentations at the Black Arts Festival in Atlanta and the New York Art Expo, as well as exhibitions in numerous galleries to national and international acclaim. Grace Kisa was born in Nairobi, Kenya, and spent her formative years in Kenya, Ethiopia, Botswana, Canada, then McLean, Virginia, before settling in Atlanta, Georgia. She came to Atlanta to study at the Art Institute of Atlanta, after which she began to pursue a career in art. Working in many different mediums, including painting, sculpture, printmaking, costume and jewelry design, and photography, Grace's artwork explores the connections between personal, cultural, national, and global perspectives. Her artistic process is a combination of creative play and problem solving, and her work explores ideas including identity and how it relates to notions of comfort and alienation, migration, and how one acculturates to a new environment, and also the concept of home set against the context of time and space. Her work has been featured in exhibitions throughout the US, and they'll be speaking to us about their collaborative project, New Africans, which is inspired by the legendary warriors and queens from the African continent and fuses elements of art, fashion, and music to reflect on identity, ancestry, and empowerment by building bridges between the African continent and the African diaspora in the United States. We're so excited to have them joining us to kick off this semester's lineup for Resounding Visions. So please welcome Maurice Evans and Grace Kisa.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
That sounded great, man. You made it sound really important.
Yes.
We need to hire you from now on. So I'm Maurice and this is Grace.
Yes.
So I guess how we can start this off is we'll talk about the inspiration behind the work. So the inspiration behind the work is actually a conversation between the two of us.
Yes.
A series of conversations. So a long time ago, we used to work together, right? And we were doing fine art together. And it was a 9-to-5 job, but literally painting all day and doing originals. And so because of the time, we had a lot of time to sit down and talk with each other because we actually worked side by side. And I had a lot of questions because I knew she was from Africa, but I didn't know much about, where she was from and her traditions and cultures and things like that. And so I knew there was always this tension sometimes between Africans and African Americans. And so I decided to explore that. So I asked her, why is this such an issue between the two groups? We're all Black, right? And she said something very interesting to me. She says, I'm not Black. And I was like, Now it was interesting to me because most African Americans, when you say Black, we're talking about people of the everybody that comes from the continent of Africa, we consider them Black. Whether you're in South America, whether you're in the islands, or whether you're in the States or Canada, wherever you are, we consider you Black, right? Same thing with the Africans. We just consider us all Black. But she said, no, I don't consider myself Black. And so that sparked really the conversation and kind of sparked the idea. So I kind of fought what she was saying at first, because I was like, that sounds kind of crazy to me. You trying to tell me you're not Black? I mean, you look Black to me. And so she says, no, I'm Kenyan. I said, okay, I get that, But then she went on to say something to me that I thought was interesting. She's like, look, you guys have been gone for 400 years, right? Your genetics have changed. You've been infused with other people. And I was like, wow, you're right. But she also said and acknowledged that you guys seem to have retained a lot of your Africanness, whether it was culture, whether it was, the way we spoke, our food, or just some of our actions reminded her of things that people did on the continent.
Right.
So I said, well, I guess, we're still African after all, right? So I said, but I must make a distinction between people that are born on the continent versus the Black people that came through the transatlantic slave trade and reside in the islands in the Americas and places like that. I decided to call us the new Africans, right? And so that kind of said everything. It says, hey, we're still connected to Africa. We still have the genetics and everything, but we are different. We have evolved as well. And I didn't take that as a bad thing. I actually took it as a great thing because, especially as being an African American, I see how much influence we have over the world, especially culturally we do, right? Sure. It's like everybody's trying to be like us, and we're just a small group, 13% of America. And it's kind of wild to me. But yeah, that sparked the conversation. Right. So fast forward many years later, Grace has helped me on a photo shoot. I was doing a shoot for a product that I put out. I created these handmade bangles, and I decided to hire some models and shoot them with the bangles on and everything. And so Grace's mother before that had sent her the
congas. So I always, as a way of retaining as a thread from home, there are a group of fabrics called kangas, and they're worn throughout East Africa. And when I see them or when I hold them, it reminds me of home. I've been gone away from home for decades. And so whenever my mom would come and visit, I would always tell her, she'd always ask, what do you want? And I'd always say fabric and coffee. So she always brought me those, and I use them in this series as my connection. So I'm somewhere straddled in between. So I'm of the continent, but I'm also a child of the diaspora since I've been living here for decades. So I am, as a way of my connection to home, is those tangible textiles.
Now she covets these things. Now
really
she,
do.
she has them,
Yes.
and she doesn't even wear them sometimes. So
Yes.
she's like a collector of these fabrics.
Yes.
And so, we're doing this shoot, and Grace did the makeup of the model and everything. And I was like, hey, since we have a little time, we're towards the end of our shoot, can we put the model in one of the congas, And Grace says, sure, why not? Right. And so we put the model in one, and I was like, see, that's what I'm talking about. Right. She looks just like she's born on the continent, right? And so it kind of sort of proved my point and proved their point at the same time. Right. And so I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And so I had another model come in, and we're doing the same thing for the bangles. And I said, hey, can we try something a little different? And while I was shooting, Grace was actually making this headpiece for the model. And she says, hey, can I try this piece on her? Sure. So she puts this piece on her. It's like a crown. And the model changed, the stature changed, and
her whole posture.
Everything changed. The energy changed in the room, and it was mind-blowing to me, right? And so we did the same thing with her. We said, well, hey, let's put in one of those congas, right? Yes. So we did the same thing, and she looked very mystical and magical and queen and warrior like. Right. At the same time. All at the same time. She looked like she was from the past and the present. Yes. So I was like, well, we should do a series. And so that's kind of how this thing started. So I started asking around all my women friends and some women I didn't know, hey, would you come and do this series that we're working on? And we decided, hey, maybe we'll do a book afterwards. And that's kind of how this whole thing started. Right. And so we've probably shot about close to 40 women at this point. Over a 10-year period. Over a 10-year period. Right. And so and as time went on, we decided to expand on the project. So, yes. I was like, well, I like the images. I love the images, but I want people to feel these images, right? And I decided to do a soundtrack for the images.
You wanted to give it a sound.
Right.
Yeah, the body of work, yeah.
Exactly. So I started creating this work that was, and I didn't want it to sound like anything else as well. I didn't want it to sound like what people call as Afrobeat or Afro beats, right? I wanted it to have its own sound. And so I think I found it. I found that something that kind of sounds old, and it is married with modern sounds, modern keyboard sounds, atmospheric sounds. And so, yes, so we're doing that. And we also do video production as well. Yes. So we did a couple performance pieces as well. And maybe next we'll do a short or something. I don't know. Right. You know what I'm saying?
A short about the process.
No, a short
about what we're illustrating, the warrior women, and the queen.
Yes. So you can see we often talk about it, and then we expand the vision on the project, which is always cool. Right. Especially when we have two artists that are multidisciplinary artists. Right. And so it's fun to kick ideas back and forth. We don't always agree on everything, but
we'll at least try it out.
Yeah, we'll try it out, and then we often come up with something pretty great. Right. And so, yeah, that's kind of sort of how this thing started.
Yes.
So
and
like,
then how it develops. So when we were coming up with the concept of the New Africans, we came up with 2 looks. So one was a warrior look and one was a queen look. So each model was shot in 2 looks and costumed to illustrate that. So my costuming consists of the queen part always had the kanga textile on it. And then the warrior part, I used handmade costuming, crowns, breastplates, collars, ankle pieces, shin guards made of all kinds of materials. So it could be sisal fiber, like this bangle. You know, it's a bangle, but I liked that the fiber looked like it has movement in it. The same thing with these collars that I was making, and I used wood.
But don't show them
these.
that yet.
Okay.
Show them that
Oh,
after
save it
after
till
the
later.
video.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
So different materials. I'm also a multidisciplinary multimedia sculptor. So it's not just one medium that I use to articulate my sculptures. I use clay, metal, wood, fiber, and found objects of all kinds to make them all work together to create something new. And so that's what I was doing with the sculpture, using the human body as my form that I would translate into these beings. Doing the hair, the sculpture for the hair, there were threaded styles that were done throughout the ages in Africa, and especially as a young child in the 70s, I would see threaded styles used.
But they don't know what you're talking. They don't know what you're talking.
Yes. Oh, right.
Explain the sculptural
element of
hair.
of
the
yeah.
hair.
So hair in Africa is used as a signifier of, so usually what clan you come from. Back in the ages, the clan wore a certain style or wore certain styles of hair for ceremonies, for ritual, for weddings, for births. And there's a style that is used to thread hair, and literally you make the hair a sculptural piece. So it's the same thing as when I'm crafting my own sculpture. I'm crafting these warriors using their hair, their bodies as my base, and these materials to create, to give the idea momentum, to make the queen actual, to make her real, to make the warrior real. And it's not the conventional spear and shield.
Right.
The armor that I was making was more like a protective garment, like a PPE that would help you. My New Africans are futuristic. And so it's not necessarily for war, but it might be for these hostile environments that you're in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right. So now we are going to show you our first video, which shows the body of work, some of the body of work that we did.
Yeah, so this video will show the actual work that we did a show. So we kind of got sidetracked. We were supposed to work on this book, and we kept having problems raising the funds for the book. But then a museum here asked us to do a show. So an exhibitions with the work. So this first video that we're going to show you is going to be the work that was included in that show. Okay. Give me 1 second. Oops. Let's see. We are supposed to share the screen.
On nous voit.
Well, there you go. That's the first video. So in there, most of the pieces are done on wood, and they are burns. So there's pyrography included in the work. There's some painting in the work. There's collage in the work.
Silver leaf and gold leaf.
Silver leaf, gold leaf. So these starts, the way the pieces start is we usually take a model and then either body paint them or adorn the body with something. It could be gold leaf, it can be actually drawing on the bodies. It could be anything, right? And then from there, Grace does her other adornments, so the hair and the makeup and the pieces that she's made for them.
Right.
And then we do the photo session. And then after we do the photo session, then I go back and look at what pieces I think will be great pieces of work, right? Then from there, we print those out, and then we literally do a sort of like a collage kind of deal with the work. And then some, like I said, are painted on, and then some are mounted, and then we decide to use a different medium, which will be fire, pyrography, burning.
Right.
The wood,
paint.
yeah, sometimes paint. And so that's what that first video was about. And when you're listening to that video, that is the music that I create, some of the music that I created for the work. So it sounds very African. Does not sound like hip hop or anything like that. I wanted to have its own sound.
Right.
So that's that first video. You want to explain on it?
How do you go about putting the music, creating the music?
Okay, so I've been doing music for a while, music production. But I've tried different programs, and one of the programs I like is called Machine. It's by a company called Native Instruments. And so I like it because it's easy to go in there and create a groove real quick. I don't have to go through a lot of changes trying to figure out this window or that window. Everything is pretty right there, right? And so the first thing I do is I just kind of create my drums first to see if I get any inspiration. And sometimes I may have already looked at some work and I've already got that in my head already. And so do I want it to sound big? Do I want it to sound like we're about to go to war? I'm thinking about those kind of things.
Cinematic. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very cinematic as well.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm trying to create a picture. I want you to be able to, go into your own world when you look at the work. But what's going to help you is when you put those headphones on, and music can really take you away. It can create this escape, and you can create your own world. And so that was the point of creating music for it. So yeah. What else?
I don't know what else. As far as the collaboration on the pieces, so we worked on those pieces together.
Yes.
So Maurice will, print them out, lay them on the wood, and he'll start on one part, and then, we're seeing things while he's working on something. I will add something else, or while he's working on one piece, I will be working on another piece. So we used cut paper. There were things, so we started to make our own hieroglyphics. So they look like their own language, like a different kind of mapping, a different way of communicating that is not the Greek alphabet or Amharic or anything that has been known before. So we created our own script, our own typography by using cut paper, and we have that as halos around the warriors or the queens under the silver leaf. So it's layered in the piece. There's texture by digging into the piece, burning into the piece, and building up on the piece. So different things like that to make it more interesting and inform we're creating an environment around these futuristic warriors and queens.
All right, so the other part of this is we decided to do a performance because we wanted to take advantage of some of the ladies' talents. And so some ladies were, professionals, they're mathematicians, they're doctors. We've had artists, we've had filmmakers, we've had
mothers,
mothers,
actors,
everything. So one young lady we asked to do a performance for us. Her name is Rashida, and she's a dancer, a professional dancer. And I was like, hey, Rashida, I would love to create this performance, but I wanted to feel very military-like, right? And so she came up with her own concept of what that is. And so it's not overly aggressive, but you can see, you can definitely see it. And so she's also wearing one of Grace's costumes. And let's just play the video so you can see it. So give me 1 second. So we're gonna screen share. Okay, so that is the second video that was part of the museum show. that played in a separate room so people could see that and actually hear the sounds and everything. I think Grace wanted to speak about.
So you were talking about in the first piece, the black and white, where it looks like she is dancing with her reflection. For me, it speaks to like the child of the diaspora dancing with her African ancestor. So even the military part where she is a warrior, and our inspiration came from the warriors from the continent, through time. So an example was Ya Santewa, who was a Ghanaian and she was a revolutionary. The Amazons in, where are they from? No, the ones in West Africa.
Yes.
I can't even think of the country where they were from. There was Nandi in South Africa, Meta Kalili in Kenya, who was helped us get independence, and women who worked in the Mau Mau movement, which is an independence movement in Kenya. So there were women that carried secrets in their hair, carried maps in their hair when they were brought on ships through the transatlantic slave trade. They carried their seeds from West Africa and planted them there. People in South Carolina who grow rice, they got rice from West Africa. And we grow rice in East Africa as well. So hair played a big, important part, but the warrior part was a sample of those on the continent. And then we have warriors in this hemisphere as well. So the first time when I was looking for warriors on this side of the Atlantic, I came across a statue of a pregnant woman called Solitude, la Mulatresse. And she fought with Luis de la Gresse in the French Guadeloupe Islands. They fought the French. So they fought together in 2 battles. He was killed in the second battle and she was captured during that second battle. The French let her deliver her child and then they hanged her afterward. There's a statue on that island in memory of her. And what I found just striking was that we had photographed a woman that was 9 months pregnant, and they were so gorgeous. And I know people were wondering, well, how does that figure in with warrior? And when I found that statue, I couldn't even believe it, and the story behind it. So, you know, I'm always looking for connections on one side to the other, connections to the work we did. And we did that work before I found that warrior. Of course, Harriet Tubman, who I never learned this in school. We were always told that she was the Underground Railroad. She was a spy for the Union, but she also led a rebellion and freed 800 people in South Carolina. And so she was actually the first woman in the US to lead a rebellion and succeed. And then there was another woman that I found. Her name was Cathay Williams. She was she enlisted into the as a Buffalo soldier in the US Army as a man. So she hid her femininity and registered as, she transposed her name. So instead of Cathay Williams, it was William Cathay. And she marched with the Buffalo Soldiers. It was the first registered woman to do that in the Union Army. So I kept finding warrior after warrior on this side of the Atlantic. There are 4 queens in St. Croix who burnt 50 plantations, and they celebrate that holiday today. It's called Fire Burn, and they were fighting the Dutch. So women have always, I found women in Brazil who also fought for freedom. So all up and down in this hemisphere, I have found Black women warriors fighting for their freedom. And when you say that we're using the futuristic Afrofuturism idea of freedom, to me, that was Afrofuturist, to fight in that time, to imagine a world beyond themselves. So even, you know, it's being created today. So people always think it is in the 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. It is actually now. It happens every day when a woman stands up to fight for, especially Black women, to fight not just for themselves, because everyone benefits when she succeeds.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to skip on. We're going to go on to the next. I think we'll go ahead and play the next 2 videos.
Yes.
So I know you probably have questions about the process. So these next 2 videos are kind of give you a glimpse of what it's like to do the shoot. And then there's another video that's a little bit more detailed about what we do. And then we'll stop the video and we'll see what the time is like at that point. Okay. All right. So let's do this. Let's see. Give me 1 second, y'all. Give me 1 second. Let's see. All right, here's the next video. This, and like I said, this is a little bit more detailed. Okay, so we have those 2 videos that we just showed you, and you can see a little bit more on the process. So you can see Grace making show them the piece, her pieces from scratch.
So what I wanted the pieces to do is to be able to be malleable and transform to the human body. It can wrap itself around. This could be across the body or, around the neck. Show you a little example. So it can, it can look like a collar, or I can have it, go across the body. What I love is also the way it can just turn in on itself. During the exhibition at the Hammond's House Museum, we had some of them, the costume pieces on mannequins, and then also had them hanging on the wall as individual abstract pieces. So, I use a lot of wood to make these. And again, in contrast to this, which was sisal fiber. So fibers, wood, string.
You have
This is an example of the East African fabric called the kanga. So there's always a border. There's always a graphic, some kind of graphic pattern on it. And then there's always a Swahili saying at the bottom. So, like a word of wisdom. A lot of women collect these, like me, and but they wear them. And when they wear them in the street, they've worn these for centuries. When they've worn them in the street, a lot of times it tells people where their mind is, what they're thinking about, what they're processing or what they're celebrating, if they want to be left alone. And it's distinct to like 7 countries in East Africa. They also have it in South Africa, but I don't think they have the saying at the bottom. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah,
So
these are
here are
samples
some of the
work.
works back here behind us, as you can see.
Mhm,
Here's one wearing the conga here.
mhm,
Here's one, instead of wearing the piece around the neck,
mhm.
she's actually wearing it around the waist.
Yes,
Same thing
I
with
was wearing both.
she's wearing both. There's one around the neck and one around the waist. And that's what we loved about Grace's costuming.
Mhm.
Because, I guess I have to say this, I started off doing the costume, right?
Yes,
Then Grace says, let me try it. And
yes.
so, her costuming was way better than what I was doing. And so I left it alone,
Mhm,
and Grace just took it over and really took it to the next level.
mhm,
So yeah, that's what's going on. Yeah.
mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
And if you haven't guessed it yet, we are husband and wife.
Right,
We met in art school.
yeah.
We met. Do we want to tell them the year? I
Mhm.
don't care.
Well, in the 80s, in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a lot of respect for each other,
Mhm.
artistically
Yes.
and personally.
Yeah.
So that's what made this project really cool.
Yeah.
Because this is actually our first time actually collaborating
Yes, on a
on
piece.
a project like this, on a
Mhm.
piece like this. So
Mhm.
so yeah, it's been fun. And I think what we want to do with it next is we want to tour it to
Yes.
different cities.
Yes.
We would love to take it out of the country.
Yeah.
Um,
I would love to see it on the continent.
yeah.
At any one of those, the art fairs. There's Dakar in West Africa. There's 154 in Morocco. There's a big one in South Africa. There's one in the Congo. So that would be an honor to have this body of work travel back home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I guess this is a good spot for any questions that
Yes.
anybody may have.
Yes, thank you so much for that presentation. And just as a quick reminder, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. I see that some are coming up here. So I think one of them that I just saw in the Q&A, sorry, not the chat, throw them into the Q&A. One of them that I saw had to do precisely with this thing that you were mentioning, collaboration. I think one of the students in my class, Carolina, mentions that she was drawn to your collaboration method and intrigued by the concept of collaborating as one way of unifying African diasporic communities with those on the continent, and the two styles working in harmony within your work.
Yeah.
And she wanted to know if mixing the two types of African and African American cultures, if there were any challenges that the two of you faced while trying to like mend and blend these two cultures together. And I think I had other students like Alicia and Amaryllis who mentioned if there was like any negotiations that you had to do in terms of like concepts that you wanted to transmit around strength, beauty, and empowerment. And Tyler also just wanted to know if there was any like differing creative opinions that you had to negotiate. So just a lot of questions around your collaboration. And I also saw in the Q&A someone asking, or just wanted to mention that, and asked, did you feel honored to work together? Because it seems like your gifts and talents artistically complement each other so well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely feel honored to work with Grace,
Mhm.
because like I said, I think she's a great artist. I've always thought that, even in art school. So yeah, it was, like I said, it's an honor. I respect her. I respect her work. I think she's a really big talent. She's more talented than most people give her credit for, right? They don't know.
They just don't
They
know.
just don't know. But I've seen it. I've seen it since we were young. I've always known it. So yes, it was an honor. I don't think there were any problems necessarily. I mean, one time
yes.
there was this one time, and
Yes.
she wanted to try something different with the costuming,
Right.
and I thought it was really
You thought it was
strange.
so strange.
And I was like,
And it
I don't
was
know.
a helmet. It was a helmet. And I
Right.
thought it was brilliant on my part.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is gonna be it. So I put it on the model, and he was like, this looks so strange. But those images are just stunning.
Those turn out really well.
I like the abstraction. I like working with
Mhm.
the unconventional and making it look unconventional. I don't want a helmet to look like every other helmet,
Mhm.
or a face guard to look like every other face guard.
Mhm.
But it looked so abstract, which is what I wanted.
Mhm.
But eventually you saw it.
So the
Mhm.
lesson in that is
Mhm.
sometimes to get better, you have to feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
or get
Yes.
pushed to a place where you're not sure.
Yeah.
And so instead of getting in the way of the process, I say, okay, let's go ahead and shoot it.
Mhm.
Let's see what we get.
Mhm.
Even though I thought it was weird, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but after shooting it and lighting it, I was like, actually, this is really cool,
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that, the push
Mhm.
sometimes. Now, sometimes we just don't agree.
Yeah, sometimes we don't,
And
but we still,
and it's okay.
still let the other do the thing.
Yeah, we kind of get out of each other's way
Mhm.
because, again, I trust her and I trust her vision.
Mhm.
So I may not get it now, but let's go ahead and do it.
Mhm.
But let me follow your lead right now.
Mhm.
And sometimes he's like, well, I'll follow your lead. So
Right.
sometimes I have makeup ideas.
Right. He does.
You know what I'm saying?
And we'll come in and paint a body a different way.
Right. Even face wise, I may have some ideas as far as what I want the face to look like, what I want the color to look like, and everything. So I know about contouring. I know y'all think I don't know. But yeah,
you're an artist,
so yeah, I'm an
know.
artist. So
Yes.
yeah, so I get out of the way, but she, she does the same for me. And we just, I think that's the beauty in collaborating, especially when you trust the other person's talent.
Right.
You don't have to worry.
Yeah, you don't.
I
recently collaborated with a young artist who we did not know each other at all. And we applied for, during the pandemic, applied for a public art piece. So we had to do it remotely, met in a park, shot the two pieces together and submitted. And then we got the deal. So we collaborated in that when she saw, we got the commission, but then she said, because we were so rushed, can we reinterpret what we did? And what we did was even better than what we because we had time to create something really, really nice. And this is someone I did not know, but I respected her work ethic, there was no fighting or tension behind that. She trusted me, I trusted her, because we knew we were both really good artists.
So another thing for young artists out there, it's always cool to work, even if you're not collaborating with another artist. Sometimes it's cool just to have the other artist in the room.
In the room,
right? Yes. And it's an artist that you can actually exchange ideas with. and you're not, and we're not trying to steal each other's work,
Yes.
right?
Or you're not intimidated.
We're not intimidated
Yeah, 'cause
by
we're
each
both
other, but
artists.
we're trying to push each other to the next
Mhm.
level. So it's like, you know, they'll say, you see what you're doing. So, well, have you ever thought about trying this or incorporating that, right?
Mhm.
And you do the same thing for the art of the artist. And a lot of times artists don't like to work around with artists because they're afraid those artists are going to steal their ideas, right? But when you can find a group of artists that you're not going to do that, and they have their egos are too big to want to steal from you anyway,
Right.
then that's really when it's really great.
Yeah.
Because you can actually learn a lot.
You really do.
And you know, artists kind of work in solitude.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think being around other artists,
Yes, it makes a huge difference.
even just for the conversation,
yes,
helps take your work to the next level. Yeah, that's should be open to.
Yeah, I think one of the also advantages of working collaboratively is just having more resources in terms of addressing difficult topics and issues, and doing so, I think, in a way that ultimately transmits, you know, like important messaging. And I think that came through in some of the questions that I see come up in the Q&A, and also ones that I received. One of them had to do specifically with representations around Black women. Maurice and Carolina mentioned that one of the aspects of this work that they were most drawn to was its reflection on how women, Black and African, are often portrayed as angry, promiscuous, and domineering, but that the message of New Africans was to portray women as warriors and queens, to empower women in this way. So they wanted to know what helped you as artists pick certain adjectives or certain like symbols or like ideas to represent women. And if you also, Evelyn, wanted to know if you ran across any challenges when representing Black women without hypersexualizing them, to show that power. And I think just on a related note, Alicia in the Q&A also just mentioned that the models for the work were all shapes and sizes, which show the natural beauty of each queen and warrior. Was this empowering feature something that both of you knew you wanted within the art, or did it come up as the project progressed?
I love that somebody caught that.
Yes.
I really appreciate that somebody caught that, because I picked most of the models, right?
Pick them all.
She's saying I picked them all,
Yeah.
but the intentions were to find all representations that I could, right? So I didn't want to just have this model looking woman to represent Black women, because they're all shapes and sizes and shades and hues and everything, right? So that was intentional, and I'm glad that somebody caught that. So a couple of the models that I approached, which I thought was interesting, is like, you know, one young lady said to me, "You sure you want me to model? You know, I'm a big girl." I said, "That's exactly why I want you. You're perfect." Right. And so she comes by and she's still not sure that we want to use her. And I'm like, "No, we want you."
Yes.
Right. And we even had this incident. I'm not going to call it incident, but her mother even called her on the cell phone and says, "Do they still want to use you?"
Right.
I'm like, that's crazy to us. You know what I'm saying? Because I see the beauty in her, just the way she is. She doesn't have to be a particular size or shape. I liked her just for what she was, right? And so, yes, that was intentional, and it was beautiful. It did something to me as well, because I started to learn how a lot of women were damaged and did not see themselves in a certain light, and they didn't see themselves.
They're never shown.
Yeah, they're never shown, so they don't see themselves, and so they don't think that they're beautiful. They don't, you know,
at all.
And so let me tell you something that's kind of crazy too. So usually what happens when we finish, I go down in the basement and I, you know, download all the images, and I just kind of go through them, right? And so I told the model that we just finished, "Hey, when you're finished, you know, putting on your clothes, come downstairs and look at the photos." She says, "Okay, no problem," you know. And so I'm downstairs going through the photos, and she comes down and she's looking at the photos. She's like, "Wow, those are stunning. Those are beautiful." Blah, 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 blah. That she's going off about that. She says, "Yo, that's cool and everything, but when are we going to get to my photos?" And I was like, "These are your photos."
She didn't.
That's how much she didn't see herself.
She didn't recognize herself at all.
Yeah. Wow. So we looked at it as something to empower young ladies, women, And even though a lot of the women are nude,
Yes.
it's not sexual.
Yeah.
Which I thought was also important to show
Mm-hmm.
that we don't have to hypersexualize women,
Yes.
even when they have no clothes on.
Yes.
You know,
Exactly.
because they are a work of art to be respected and adorned. And that's kind of how I saw it.
Perfect. Yeah, Alicia just had a follow-up here in the Q&A. Absolutely love the fact that you used models of all sizes. It is such an amazing and beautiful message for younger African-American girls and other people of color. I felt so empowered myself. So yeah, I think the question around working with models also came up for several students. I had Morgan, for example, mention, thank you for bringing awareness to the beautiful culture of New Africans and celebrating women through your unique project. It's really beautiful. And then they wanted to know if, because New Africans are thinking about this population of people who traveled to Europe, to the Americas, to the Caribbean, and all throughout as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, if there was like a conscious effort to also be inclusive in terms of different geographies, or I think other students just wanted to know kind of how you found some of the models. And I think you spoke a little bit of to that. And Michael just also had an interesting follow-up as to if any of them took any like convincing, or if they kind of knew about the project ahead of time, and yeah, like that relationship and dialogue that you had with them.
That's a good question. Now, as a man, this can be challenging, right? When you tell a woman, hey, I would love to shoot you, but you got to be nude, right? That's a bit
and you
of
don't know them.
And you don't know them. It's a bit of a challenge because they think that you're trying to come onto them.
Right.
And trying to do, something else with the photos, And so once I had a couple of models shot, it was a little easier because I could then send them examples of what we were trying to do. And I can explain to them, just like we're doing now, what the intentions are. And it brought the guards down. Now, some people were a little nervous. They hadn't done it before. But once they came here and sat with us, that we were serious. Yes.
Because, he's meeting them. I'm not with him when he's doing that. And then they're trusting because he's convinced. I mean, it's convincing enough. First of all, you can always Google Maurice Evans and they know that he's a professional artist. So this is not some shady deal. And then, they've seen the work. And then they started referring their friends. Some of them referred their family members. One of them brought two of her sisters. Someone brought their mother, or their mother brought their daughter, and they did a shoot together. Maurice, when we had our exhibition at Hammond's house, one of the models, she's not on the wall now. So she had done it, and this was maybe 8 years ago. Her daughter saw them, and she's across the country. She was so proud of her mother. She posted it on her Instagram and was like, look at my mom. And people started following us based on her post of her mother. So it was another affirmation that your child loves this enough that they want to share it with the world. Or when you were shooting the woman in her 50s and her daughter in her 20s came from work, saw and was like, I want to get on. Okay, put me in makeup and hair and costume. I'm going to jump into the shot. And we got some beautiful shots from that.
And we were lucky enough to find people from different places. So somebody was from Suriname, somebody's from Georgetown and Guyana. Bahamas. They were all different places. Jamaica. Some people traveled here to come and do the shoot.
Suriname.
We had only one stipulation, that was that none of the models could be actually born on the continent of Africa, right? Because we was trying to prove a point, but you couldn't tell us apart.
No, you can't.
And so, but I snuck one in. Because you can't tell us apart.
Exactly.
Right. So that was kind of the point of it. But everybody else is not directly from the continent.
Right.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I think you're all speaking also to this other kind of branch of questions that I received around reception. I think you spoke a little bit about how women who participate in the project experience the work. And I think that there's also these messages, right, Maurice, that you kind of like snuck in there maybe, and I think both overtly, but also like maybe a little covertly. And so a lot of students were just curious about how you kind of balance and ultimately measure like and try to regulate the fact that certain ideas are coming through for the audience. So Heather Lee, for example, noted that it's a very kind of important conversation to have between the relationships between African communities and diasporic Black communities. So if like there was specific messages that you wanted each one of them to take away from the project, or Jared was also curious if there were any important messages that you wanted non-Black or non-African viewers to take away from this project. And if it's, I guess, just more broadly, something that you think about and that drives certain maybe creative decisions or other decisions in terms of how the object, how the exhibition, how the objects and artworks are presented. This question of like, if what you're trying to say is coming across.
Yeah, it does.
I think
It
it's
does.
coming across now. That is an interesting question, is, how do we want others who are not African American or African to receive the work? Now, when we did the work, my target was African Americans in particular, because they had lost their connection to Africa, right? So it's more of an awakening. Hey, you guys are connected to Africa, right? So even now, you'll be surprised that some African Americans don't think of themselves as African, right? So I thought it was important to make the connection. So it really was for us, right? But I think
it's an education for everyone,
from another country or another group, who hasn't been around their people for a while, could relate to this.
Can relate to that,
right?
And relate to the reconnecting,
and exactly
the connection between those on the continent and those in the diaspora, because we're always looking for each other, and we have always been in contact. People think that once they got on those ships, that was it. But through time, I keep finding where Africans have called on African Americans. When Kenya was looking for its going towards independence, they heard about Thurgood Marshall, and Thurgood Marshall met the young African freedom fighters and gave them points on, because they figured he has experience in dealing with racism and the constriction of being under the rule of white people. And so because of that experience, like, how do we negotiate this independence from this group of people? He ended up writing the initial Bill of Rights for our Constitution before he even African Americans have the right to vote. So he has written it, and he didn't copy the American Constitution or European Constitution. It was a completely different thing. So again, that's an example of Afrofuturism. You're thinking of a future that you don't even have, that you're designing a future for your brothers and sisters on the continent that you don't have, but you can see the vision for them. So
yeah, I really like that question though, because again, because it's like like I know people who are from other places and they don't speak their native tongue.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I'm struggling to remember mine.
Right. And so, I hear this all the time, and it's not just Africans or, it's all the groups, you know what I'm saying? So, true. And sometimes they'll say, I can't wait to go back to wherever, whether it's Ireland or Spain or wherever their people are from. They want to make a connection, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. They've only been told about it. And again, they've lost a lot of their culture, right? And so they want to make that connection, right?
That's why they're doing these DNA tests to find out where they're from, because that might have been told one thing or another, and then they take the test and they find it's a whole different story. So everybody is looking for that history, and that way it works for every culture.
Yeah. So with African Americans though, it's a little deeper, because we don't know what country we're from. Right. Most people can at least say, I know what country I'm from. We just know the landmass. And then we know that we're probably and typically going to be from the west coast of Africa. So we know that. Yeah. Right. So it's a different kind of thing for us. Right. You know what I'm saying?
You know the region. Yeah. But now with the genetics, they can find, pinpoint the group, the ethnic group that you came from, and then that can give you a pinpoint, but you're also mixed in with everyone else. So you can put a pin, I guess, charting your genetics.
But the spark of curiosity is a big thing, right? So if it sparks you to say, okay, where am I from? Or matter of fact, why do I eat these foods? Right. Why do I dance this way? Why do I talk this way? Right? You'll see a connection, because Grace used to do that to me a long time ago. She's like, you guys eat that? And it's like, yeah, we do. Right. My people are from the South, from Alabama and Georgia, South Georgia. And so she would be amazed, this food kind of tastes like some of the things that we do. And I said, well, my father's always cooked like that. You know what I'm saying? So, it's still there. So now
even the rituals, we'll see rituals and they're packed the same. And now with the advent of the internet, Africans on both sides, on all sides, can see each other and make the parallels. I mean, I see a lot of people do it all the time. They'll find the old picture of Will Smith's son and then find the tribe and the person looks exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly.
I do that. We used to do that, my sisters and I, when we go to Kenya or Botswana or Ethiopia, we point out who looks like our friends on this side. And literally, I just came back. I was there for 2.5 months, and I was like, there goes Maurice. So there's Jamila, and there's Anthony, and there's so and so. I mean, as I'm walking by them, I'm like, we see the same faces, and now we can see the same rituals in real time without interference. We're communicating with each other. So there's always, the internet literally brought us back together.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing those reflections. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I just have like 2 more questions because I know that you're being very generous with your time, and thank you so much. And I did want to ask you all questions that were maybe more pertaining to individual aspects of your practice. So I had someone in the Q&A who asked about the music in the first video. So for Maurice, if specifically they noticed that it sounded like they were saying something, or there was some kind of language in the music, and they wanted to know if it was something in particular or if it was just intended as more like abstract vocals.
Okay, yes, they're abstract vocals, but they are saying something. So I had a friend of mine from Haiti, say, hey, can you say Africans and New Africans, yes. Right? And so the same thing, I asked Grace to say something in Swahili, right? And so we didn't need a track of anybody singing anything in particular. It was, hey, Africa. So it's in your subconscious. It's like, back in the day, they would sneak little things in. So that was my way of kind of sneaking it in. And so, yes, I put a couple of little effects on it to kind of drag on some things or change some octaves and things like that. So yeah, that was intentional. Yeah.
Awesome. And then for Grace, Britt wanted to know if you find yourself inspired by materials first, or if there's certain concepts that then inspire your search for materials to express those concepts.
A lot of times I am kind of a hoarder, but constructive, in a constructive way. So I will see the object as its thing, the form of it, not necessarily what it was used for. And I will, bring them home. I've made a rule for myself not to bring anything in the house until I use all the bins, all the stuff in the bins. So a lot of times it's putting those 2 disparate pieces together, seeing how they talk to each other, and then I go from there and build. So a lot of times it's that. And then as I'm working, the concept will come to me.
Awesome, perfect. And then just maybe the last question, you spoke a little bit about future directions, and I did have a lot of students who are curious about what comes next. I have one that says, if specifically you have ever considered doing another iteration of this project that focuses on Black men, thinking about like the misrepresentations of Black men, especially in the US. And also someone in the Q&A just wanted to know if you have any plans to come to California with the exhibition. So those were two questions, maybe thinking about the future and what we can expect.
Yeah, I would love to come to California. I used to come to, I mean, we used to come to LA, and I used to do shows in Oakland almost every year. So yeah, I would love to bring it to the West Coast. I would love to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yes, we've been talking about doing men. Yeah, we've been talking about. We just haven't started on it, but we've definitely been talking about it. Trying to figure out the best way to do that, and I think I might have a harder time getting men to do it for some reason. But I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it might not be a thing. So yeah.
Because you would have thought it would have been hard to find women, but
Yeah,
you
that's
found
true.
all ages, all sizes.
That's true.
I mean, most of them were mothers.
Yeah.
98% of them
Yeah.
are mothers.
Yeah.
And they did it. Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't excluding men. We just wanted to
focus
address
on
women first.
Because of you don't see women of any race acknowledged in history. You just don't. And so I think that that's the important part of making sure we make that. So I don't think one exhibition is enough to put that in the consciousness that all the history that we've lost or that's been suppressed on the contribution of half the population of the earth, and they've done nothing or 10 things.
Right.
It's ludicrous.
Right.
So that's why the importance on the woman part. For me, I'm not yet ready to let it go, because we just literally just scratched the surface, and I keep finding warrior after warrior, queen after queen, kingdom after kingdom, and it's I'm not ready yet. Yeah.
I don't know. Well,
but I'm open. I'm open to it. I'm definitely open to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing again. There's many more questions that we received, but we want to be respectful of your time. And just thank you again so much for your generosity and sharing your work and responding to these questions. And thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
We're excited to maybe see you all in California at some point, and if not, continue to follow the project.
Okay.
So thank you all for being here.
Tell some of the galleries there. Tell them to bring us.
Yeah.
Put some pressure on them. Tell them to call us. Yes.
Definitely, we will. And so thank you, Maurice and Grace, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for signing on tonight. We're going to be having Resounding Visions presentations throughout the rest of the semester on Thursdays. So we hope that everyone comes back next week. For those of you that are in my class, please stick around for just a sec. I wanted to connect with you all briefly. And for the rest of everyone, thank you so much for being in this session, and have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you.